that. So Donna, um, in this book, you talk about 7 keys, right? You want to go into a little bit about the 7 keys?
Sure, I'll be happy to. But first, I want to thank your friend who is new in this cancer journey, which I have also experienced.
Carol. Mhm.
Carol, I want to thank Carol for taking to the time to read the book. And that's really touches my heart that someone who's in a healing process and so new to that healing process would take the time to do that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. So yeah, so I talk about, no, the healing moment is the subtitle is, 7 paths to turn messes into miracles of love.
Right.
And those of us like Felicia and these painful experiences in life, and particularly, when we're too young to do anything about it, we often develop all kinds of pain and suffering, and for me, addictions. And but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how bad someone screwed up or how bad we screw up with their screw ups. Because I
Yeah,
had choices. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a guide. I didn't have a book called The Healing Moment to help me to understand.
exactly.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me that was the problem. The problem was my environment. And to be able to approach that from not blaming anybody, but to just look at it, to understand it, to mourn it, to grieve it, and to heal it. So no matter what we do, and in my case, I tried to walk that spiritual line, but eventually all the pain got me because I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't have an outlet, and I became more like the family that I didn't want to become than not. So my
Yeah.
point of writing the whole book, is none of that matters, because you can, in fact, it's not only doesn't matter, you can use all those experiences from your own suffering, and from your own mistakes, and
Yeah.
turn them into positive ways of helping other people, positive ways of healing, positive ways of self empowerment. We do not have to be victims of
Right.
anything ever.
I agree. And I'm going to say about what Carol said about forgiveness, reading that in the book, how it helped her. I wrote my first book, Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons, which is a memoir, and I left nothing out. I mean, I left nothing out. And of course, my father was alcoholic. I never thought that I would become an alcoholic. And my best friend from first grade all through our 20s, she got into an addiction. She was a nurse. And her little girl and my 2 little girls had been playing with each other when they were young and everything. And then I grew apart from her. And when I had my book signing in Scranton 2 years ago, this little girl, who was now a grown woman, came to it and she said to me, "Your book helped me forgive my mother, who eventually had OD, died from addiction."
Hmm.
I still get chills because when you write a book about your experiences and you take that leap of faith to put it out there and not worry about being judged, if you help even one person, I think that's great.
I agree with you 100%. It's not that we're trying to, air our dirty laundry
Right.
or throw anybody under the bus or
Right.
blame anybody. I'm not when in my writing. It's not my purpose at all. The purpose is that to illustrate that no matter what happened, forgiveness is the key to the way out of any type of trauma and pain, but it's the ultimate way out. It's not the beginning. It's a process. First, we have to face what happened, then we have to allow ourselves to feel that pain so
Yeah.
that we ridding ourselves of that pain. And I think sometimes, and this is a spiritual book, but sometimes in spirituality, we get the message, or the message is given to bypass that process, and that's not reality. Reality is, as human beings, if we suffered and we're holding that pain in, we must release it,
Yeah.
embrace it, release it, acknowledge it, and then then forgiveness is a natural part. It's through that process that we begin to have compassion. I have major compassion for my stepfather, who was alcoholic and abusive. I mean, he had to live with that, and he couldn't, so he drank. And then my mother, I focus on her wonderful qualities. She did the best she could with what was available at the time. You know, it's wonderful now we have so many tools that we could say, well, you know, there is no excuse now because we know how to properly parent. We know how to let children heal. We don't need to do what our parents did. But there's 8 billion people on the planet. And we still have a ways to go.
Oh
But
gosh, I'll say
for
so.
me, and my mom, you know, she's 92 now, and I have the luxury of being able to, and I do feel it's a luxury to be able to go see her almost every day and be the one to make sure that she's cared for now. I don't have any type
Yeah,
of
yeah,
residuals about the past.
that's wonderful. I think the reader will learn a lot from this book about healing and moving on. And I did for sure. I'm still, I will say it's so funny. It's like there's only one person I haven't forgiven, which I guess in my life isn't that bad because I've been told only one. I'm like, yeah, I worked on, but I looked at everything and was able to forgive people that had hurt me in my life, especially my parents. Um, but I feel badly for my mother because my father got sober and he went to AA and he read the big book and he practiced the principles after he was 60 years old. But he was still around long enough that we could make amends and I could forgive him. And I had forgiven my mother, but I think she died with a lot of guilt and shame of her own making, not
Not
that
at
I,
peace.
yeah, yeah, I know she did because just things that she said to me. Well, what are you going to do? You have your journey. Everybody has their own journey. And
It
in your,
takes so much courage to face our shame and our regrets and our mistakes.
yeah,
And I think that as human beings, we have to be willing to create the space for our loved ones to do that and for ourselves to be able to do that to we have these programs that tell us to make amends, but the amends aren't nearly so much as for someone else as for ourselves, that we are letting ourselves free from our mistakes of the past.
yeah, I agree with that. And you also said in your book that the healing moment occurs when you decide to flip your internal switch and finally let light flood into your consciousness. Now, I know what I took away from that, but what did you mean by that in your
Well, it's a
process?
decision. I believe that we all have that inner light and inner spirit, but it's not going to intrude because love does not intrude. Love is always available, but we have to invite it. And we've been told that in many different ways and many different languages. And that's my belief, is that the God of my understanding, which is love,
Yeah,
is not going to force its way into my consciousness. So I mentally and emotionally and spiritually must say, I want that. I
yeah,
want that light, and it will come.
yeah. I talking about light and internal switches. I think throughout my life, well, first of all, my coping strategies, like some of yours, um, alcohol, men, food, whatever, because I didn't want to feel and I didn't really want to come out of my cave. My life experience at first was one of a survivor. I survived a lot of abuse. And I remember times when the light would come on for me for a moment, but it was like lighting a match and then it would go out. It was like a momentary light.
Okay.
And so it really took a long time. And I really, even though I thought I was doing well and I got sober and I was doing the steps and everything, I had to do a lot of work yet. I did find myself in depression a year sober and 5 years sober. And both times I felt it necessary to do inpatient uh, to work on these family issues, which, trust me, that's the core of most of our dissonance because our core beliefs come from our parents. Do you agree?
I
Did you
didn't
re-
catch the last part.
that our core beliefs come from our parents? They're the ones who kind of still in us who we are, and maybe if they're damaged, okay, their message might not be as powerful or positive as it should be. Or
Well, of course, when we're little people, the father and mother are the god and goddess. And that's our understanding of what we are. And so when that god and goddess disapproves or doesn't treat us with love and kindness, we definitely would take on those messages that we are less than or not worthy of
yeah,
the love of that god and goddess. Something's
yes,
wrong with us, rather than
yes,
as we heal, we recognize something was wrong there, not with us.
right. It took me a long time. I'm, I'm still, I'm still working on myself, of course. I don't think you ever stop.
Well, that's a
Um,
beautiful thing. We get to keep doing that.
yeah, yeah,
How happy do you want to become is the question.
exactly. And
You know, you
I,
can hang up your hat anytime you want.
anytime you're right. But my husband has Parkinson's and he's in stage 3. And then, of course, we got hit with 2020. So the pandemic. And depression came back. Depression came back. And I sought out help, therapy, etc., which was the right thing to do. Um, and that is where my book came from in the first place. My therapist told me to write. She said, write every day. Because he gets very quiet. There's not a lot of talking in our house, except me talking to myself. So it wasn't so much as I started to write it, I could feel how this could help other women, right? So I'm trying to think about, I still get triggered. Like there's still core beliefs that I haven't changed. That what you said, that I'm not enough, I must be perfect. So Donna, how do you believe women can transform by understanding how the mind uses its own fear to manipulate our lives? In other words, we're doing this to ourselves, I think is what I'm saying. That
I,
that clear?
I don't believe we're intentionally doing it to ourselves. I just think that we've been conditioned to be fearful because we've been hurt. And when we've been hurt or betrayed or treated lovelessly, abusively, or lots of bad things have happened. Again, we develop this part of the mind that says it's not safe, people aren't safe, the world's not safe, and we develop these defenses to keep from
Yes.
being hurt, and that's impossible because then we do it to ourselves by isolating and by withdrawing and by not being on the playground. We sit back and watch, or we turn our back on the playground. So what I'm trying to convey here is that you just recognize that all the negative emotions really are fear. They're fear. And once you can face those fears,
Yeah.
then you can walk through them. Most fear is the bad part is not facing it. It keeps us trapped in this, what we call anxiety, which I don't believe in anxiety. I believe anxiety is nothing more than fear. It doesn't need to be medicated. I don't care if it's physiological or not. All fear is physiological because when you have scary thoughts, you're going to have physiological reactions. I don't believe that babies are born that way. I've never seen a baby that was panicking and anxious. I
No,
just don't believe that. I
it
don't buy
is
it. I'm not going to believe it. I've
okay.
done a lot of,
Yeah, I can see you
searching
feel
and
strongly about that. So
absolutely,
basically, if
absolutely. So when we face the fear and
yeah,
then we get support, because
uh-huh,
we often need that to walk through the fear, we get on the other side of it and then we feel so much better and we feel good
yeah,
about ourselves. We feel empowered.
right, right. And healing can be painful and confusing. And going through my therapy years past, I was in group therapy, I was in, one-on-one, I was inpatient. Like I did all forms. And I remember how drained I would be afterwards and the crying and the pain. Okay. And I could have stopped. I could have just said, this is too hard, you know. But thank God I didn't stop because I really needed to dig very very deep for my core issues, let's call them.
Right.
Um,
So the pain, it takes courage to feel all that. That's why I said at the beginning, it took great courage for you to say, this is hard, but I'm going to stay.
yes, yes,
What happens though, that most of the pain, there's two things with the pain. Part of the pain is just the pain that's been sitting in there and now you're facing it. You're reliving what didn't get completely synthesized and processed early on. And then the other part is the shame and the embarrassment about being vulnerable. So
mhm,
we can eliminate that whole second part by just saying, I'm proud of myself that I have the courage to reveal my innermost self to these people in my life,
exactly,
whether it's your group
exactly.
or your therapist or your loved
Right.
ones, whoever.
Yeah, in our chat box, I know Delicia's having problems with her voice, so she didn't want to join in, but she is saying that her depression is situational and medication is just a band-aid and not a cure. And she knows she has to go deeper. And thank you for that comment. So, and as a person recovering from addiction too, I think addictions are all substitutes for love. Yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that those addictions are because we're looking for love and the type of love we're looking for, or maybe we're not finding it because the love is really self-love that we need?
Right. Well, in my book,
Thoughts?
Exit the Maze, One Addiction, One Cause, One Solution, that's my whole premise is that every addiction is a substitute for love. And what's happened is we've confused the two. I love chocolate chip cookies. I love champagne. I love to go shopping. I love the porn site. I love
Ah,
this. I love that. I love gambling. We don't love any of that.
no,
Nobody really likes or loves any of that. What we do confuse is that the feeling that gives us, those things give us that temporary
yeah,
endorphin hit, that
endorphin, yeah,
frontal lobe of the brain is getting activated, and then we're getting all these other responses,
yeah,
chemical and physiological responses that get us high, and that's what we're really loving. But that's not love at all. Love is an action word, and it means taking the kind of care of yourself that you feel high all the time. You wake up in the morning feeling good, you go to sleep at night feeling peaceful, and you're on fire. That's how I live
yes.
my life every day.
I think that's great. And I remember a time sober with a good marriage and everything going my way, where I would wake up and I didn't want to die, but I didn't necessarily want to face the day. And that's a form of depression too. But I know that feeling. And I think that's why that pushed me to keep working on myself because just getting sober and doing the steps and all that wasn't enough for me. For me. I had to dig deeper.
Yes, and good for you that you did and you had the courage to do that. And one of the things I teach people is that everything is always going your way, even if it doesn't feel like it,
Yeah.
because within every moment is an opportunity to have a healing moment. And so when we learn to ask the light to be turned on and revealed to us in that moment,
Yes.
what is
Yes.
the essence of this situation right here?
Yeah.
And that's why we keep hitting the same walls, and that's why we keep doing the same types of mistakes and getting triggered by the same things,
Yeah.
because there's a piece of us that is ready to expand the light into it and no longer have to do that
Right.
anymore.
Right. And that's it. I need to go easier on myself. I was always very hard on myself, even when I got sober and tried was in the healing process. But I know today, like when I do get triggered and I get angry about something, like I have to stop, I have to pause, and I have to say, okay, what's going on? Why is this triggering me? It's not because they're 10 minutes late. They are 10 minutes late. It's annoying, but I'm really like upset. And the other thing just went out of my head that I was going to say, but
Well, those of us that didn't get the right kind of support or didn't get enough support growing up, when that's reflected back to us in the current now, we relive all of that. So that's where, again, to be able to embrace that and to feel it, and then to be moved, transcend beyond it.
yeah. Well, I think I know what I was going for too, and we'll probably wrap this up. So, believe it or not, this went by so fast. Uh, when I was in this situation after the pandemic with my husband and dealing with the Parkinson's every day and not leaving the house for a year, I started being very mean to him. And that's how I knew I was depressed. I had had enough therapy. I'd read enough books that I went, you know what? I think this is depression. So thank God I had like a little self awareness, which I would not have had if I
Yes.
hadn't done the work. If that makes sense, right? Like I,
It's, yes, you're able to self-examine and to be an objective observer of your own behavior.
yeah. So even if you feel like, oh, there's still so far to go, just that part of being aware that you know that something's triggering you and that it's
But you're
not.
not yourself.
Yes, yes, and that you can, and I talk to people, as you can see, which is a very important thing too, to talk to another person, you know. Well, Donna, this was wonderful. And what are you doing now? You have a podcast yourself? Do you?
No, I don't. No,
Oh, okay, you just
I've
appear on
been
a
on
lot.
over 100 podcasts, but
I
I don't have
know.
one myself.
Yeah. And I need to have you back because there's so many areas we could talk about just specifically on certain areas. Would that be possible in the future for the podcast now?
Of
Good,
course, and
good,
you're
good.
doing such wonderful work, and it's so nice that you're using your experiences to help other people, and Delisha too. I'm anxious to read your book, Delisha, Kissing the Asphalt. Uh,
I like
you
that
know, just
title though.
well,
I don't
both of
know.
your titles are very powerful,
Yeah,
but it's like you said at the very beginning, if one person is helped, it's worth all the work that we put into this.
that's right.
You
Well,
know,
thank
that's exactly what I say too. Exactly. That's
good.
what motivated me to write it. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to reading your book as well.
All right. I'm glad you chimed in at the end. That's great. And thank you again, Donna, for coming.
You're very welcome.
I always love talking to you. And we'll get together again soon. All right.
Okay.
And thank you, Julie.